So, episode 9, here we go. How's your week been, Jen? How's your week been?
Oh, thanks for asking. I realized you asked me that at the start, and sometimes I don't ask you back. I get so caught up. It's good. Lots of things happening. We had a great workshop with the female coach program that we're running. That was on Sunday, and that kind of rippled into the week of the buzz. I was a little bit tired, but you get that way when you're excited and putting all your energy into stuff. Some great coach conversations, some coaches coaching, others not. But that's, again, giving them some time to think about different plans and putting things in place. Bit of exercise now that it's stopped raining. So what's been on your agenda? I know homeschooling has been one of them.
So I've had a life highlight.
Oh, yeah.
The Panini Sticker album 2021. My son has asked, Daddy, can I collect stickers for the Panini Sticker album? And this, I think it's almost like a rite of passage that has gone on for many, many children for many, many years that have any kind of affiliation with football. And he asked to collect some Panini stickers today. And you should have seen his face when he opened one of the free packs that came with it. And the Mohamed Salah, is that his name? The Liverpool player.
Yeah.
Mo Salah. That was the gold Mo Salah sticker was in there, and it was literally like it just suddenly turned into his birthday and Christmas wrapped up in one. And it was one of those moments that I was like, this is brilliant.
I can just have a vision in 2 or 3 months' time, and he's got a stack and he's like, need, have. And then you're like, Dad, can we swap these with someone?
Yes. And we had an hour playing football on the kitchen floor with different kind of games. Yeah, he has a very bad 2-footed tackle at the moment because he can slide on the kitchen floor. So kind of sometimes standing up, sometimes sideways, different types of techniques. And if I'm laying down, he's got to work out how to get the ball in the air and just kind of playing with different stuff, really. He doesn't know he's practicing anything, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm knackered by the time I've
He's like, one more time. What about
I know, yeah, an hour of that.
Oh, wow. That's cool, though.
Yeah, it was all right. It's good fun. So, right, let's get into a topic. Now, we talked a while back about the importance of individual development plans. And this is something that I know that you have a lot of experience having worked with different coaches in different sports to do. And it's a really important part, and something that's often neglected from a coach is they often consider doing some for athletes and not often for themselves. But let's get into both of those areas today about what may be in an athlete or player's IDP, but for you as a coach as well, what might be in yours. Sound a good topic to get into?
Oh, yeah. When you mentioned it last week as one of the top tips, I was like, yeah, we need to get into that. It's always on the agenda in some shape or form with the coach when I have a conversation. Sometimes it's me nudging it. Can we have a look at that? What do you think of that? And then the other times it's, well, that's awesome. What do we need to do to get that to, in some cases, the next level or the next rating or however they measure the progress. So yeah, let's dive into that. What's your experience with them? What have you seen? What have you come across?
So from doing and being involved in player ones, and I'll use the term player because from my perspective it was football at the time, but again just kind of associate to your own world. It was traditionally just the coach decides what's in it, and there's a semi-tokenistic conversation with the player, but largely the coach decides what's going on. And I've been involved in doing these from grassroots clubs all the way through to seeing them done at international level. And it's very mixed, but very coach-led typically. And then the most recent ones that I was involved in doing, I wanted to try and do it differently, which meant that it was entirely player-led, which was longer in terms of the process, but certainly much more individual. But yeah, an interesting way of doing it, definitely, because we didn't then have a one-size-fits-all template. And I can see why some sporting systems might want to do that, have a one thing or on some kind of online system that's, you know, cloud-based. I kind of get that. But this was very light technology, light touch. But what we did is we talked about the players' input into it and them shaping it and them owning it. And that was the crucial bit. What about yourself?
God, yeah, loads sparking from that. I think what you've nailed there is that either co-created or driven by the person, be it the coach or the athlete. Because if I work as a coach developer or the coach and I come in with this shiny page and say you must, some are grateful to have a template because they haven't seen it before. But then when they get into nitty gritty, they go, oh, what does that mean? And all of a sudden they're worried about how it looks fitting into this as opposed to what works for them or what's feasible for them in, you know, the pinch points in different sports, when their competition is, blah, blah. So, and then how long is it? So is it something that's, you know, short, medium or long term, or does this do your process goals fill into this? You know, there's loads of different angles on it, but I love that way of like, you know, you're driving it. Here's a couple of samples that you run with. So say for the Basketball England program, there was just 3. I guess that's another thing we could dive into, like how many things should you look to improve over a span of time? I've seen IDPs personally had one and seen it over the course of the years where they're packed with all these different areas, and all of a sudden that becomes your focus and can be some sort of a mental blocker. Then if you're like, you know, looking at numbers and small progressions, and, oh, I never made that deadline, I never made this, as opposed to actually there could be massive gains somewhere else that you've overlooked because you're, you know, embedded in what's on a piece of paper. But the ones that we do with coaches on the UK Coaching Performance Foundation program are a RAG rated one. So that was useful for a lot of coaches because that's familiar with what they use with their athletes. So they'll start on, it's in a red space, or it could be an amber for some. And it's literally a, you know, what is it? How are you going to, you know, get it off the ground? Who do you need? What support do you need to do that in the next part? And then measure it. So in some cases, that could be the column that you might color code to get to the goal stage. And some people have tweaked it. They've taken it, they've put their logos on it, they've shortened it down, they've gone, you know, other people have had 2 pages, but they've kind of fed into, you know, maybe at one heading and then just dissected it down. So the only kind of steer is when people default to putting down formal quals. I've seen a couple of coaches going, well, I'm going to get my level this, my level that, I'm going to do this course and this course. And I do just question it. I definitely don't say don't. I'm like, why is that? Is this something that you passionately want to do and feel a gap? Or so, yeah, that's my initial kind of download on the IDP side, but loads there we can dive into.
Yeah, I definitely had, I can remember two lads that I did it with. One, I think I mentioned previously, was a trainee teacher, centre half in a football sense, very good player, but very structured in his thinking. So he had an Excel spreadsheet that had RAG ratings and all sorts on it with filters and all this kind of jazz. One lad, very different background. No one ever really knew what he did for a job. It was one of those kind of just don't ask, don't know kind of things. It's better not to know. But what worked for him was one page with a picture of Steven Gerrard on it with 6 words.
Oh, wow.
Because that's what he was, just, that was him. It worked for him. But yeah, so I mean, I've got a couple of interesting questions. One story, one question. So Luke Donald, the golfer, when he started working with a psychologist, and at the time he was #1 in the world. And I think golf is a sport that has a lot more, certainly at that level, a lot more data, and it can be a lot more objective. You know, greens hit, fairways hit in regulation, up and downs from rough. Like you got a lot of data. And Luke Donald was ranked #1 in the world from bunker play in terms of getting out of a bunker and 1 putting. So saving par from bunker, he was #1 in the world. And the point that the guy, Dave Aldred, who is a very smart psych guy, worked with Johnny Wilkinson and a whole host of other athletes. Luke's gone, right, well, I'm #1 in the world. That's it. To which Dave's point is, But does that mean you can't get any better? You know, I'm a 10 out of 10. Okay, so drop the out of 10 bit. So you might be a 10. What does an 11 look like? What does a 12 look like? So how can you keep improving that whole kind of concept of Kaizen, that constant improvement? Wow. And he did a lot of stuff with his putting that was based upon not holding a putt, but holding a putt in the center of the cup. Not it just kind of like a lot of mine would do. They would go in and whiz round and then maybe like most of them drop in if you're lucky. But his like dead center, that like this is the difference at that level. Wow. But it was always based upon from a scoring system, not red, amber, green, because green says, right, I can't get any better. I've nailed it. If you score yourself a 20, who cares what the scoring system is? If you score yourself a 20, what's a 21? Yeah. Because we must be always able to get better.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, it reminds me, I had a chat with a coach I'm working with in Millfield, and their director of sport there was having a chat with all the departments and saying kind of, if you have chats with the athletes to develop these plans and goals, make sure that they're doing the homework. So if it's in athletics, do they know the times that are needed? And if it's the time of last year's, whatever competition for whatever age group, what's the projected one? And can you work that out together? I mean, I know athletes might not have that answer, but similarly with the coach, what kind of forward thinking and planning can you do to look beyond, not instead of, I guess I can totally see where you're coming from there. If you have a rag rate and you get to gold and you go, well, that's done. I'm sure nothing's ever done, is it? No. Like you've never cleared the level of like psychology and nutrition, and not that coaches need to have all those hats on all the time. But yeah, that's a really nice way of looking at it. Like, what other scenarios? Colin Cronin actually said at one time when we were talking about learning, he was saying the scenarios are your learning piece. So this, as the scenarios arise, or different things happen in different environments, you see them, maybe not just to you, that informs where you might be curious about to solve it, or you might seek your next thing. So if that's something you could incorporate in your development plan, the what's next, the future projection of that. That would be something really cool, because there is a nice challenge to that. It's not, it's in around that smart area, but yeah. I like that.
How many focus points would you say that a coach or an athlete or player should have in their IDP?
Oh my, as in like areas?
Yeah, or just things to work on at one time. Because I think the point that you made earlier was a really important one. Like, there is always so much you could be doing.
Yeah.
But how much should you narrow that focus down to?
That's a really good one. It's interesting because a couple of different coaches popped into my head there, and some are in like the tri world, some are in Mod Penn where there's multiple disciplines. And for them, they thought they had to look at like all of the areas and develop within all of that. Say if their focus was near technical or different areas of development within it. And I guess one area I would look at, as if I was supporting a coach or they were planning themselves, was to look at what the season looks like and what's feasible within that, and then look at where they're at now. So I think without getting heavy into cycles and stuff, I do think pre-season plays a certain part with the load and what you can gain. Pre-comp stages and building into blocks into the competition season, if you have it, if some sports have it all year round. What are the kind of the just in time, just in case things that are useful to have, the need to have, the want to have. But like, I think you're absolutely maxing out on 3. If I've seen things that are 5 and 6, but some of those are like not quick wins because everything takes hard work, but they're small little things, they're small fixes. So one could be like, to develop my network. That's an ongoing small one that you can continue to do with maybe something that's a little bit bulkier or chunkier, or takes a little bit more time. So like 3 is a great starting point. Some people will come back and say, oh, I can manage 5, or what about 1 gen? Be realistic. But it does depend on what that person has chosen to take on. The only thing I would say, where I did see 1 or 2 on it, I would worry that becomes the only focus. and they narrow that right down to, I'm nailing this down. So if it's someone doing a master's and they've put that on it, I maybe would evaluate why the whole master's is down. And like, that's something you've committed to do anyway, which is fantastic. So what around that works, on your development plan? Because that's a massive chunk.
Yeah, it's quite macro, isn't it?
Yeah, that's macro, for sure. So yeah, lobbing, I mean, this goes back to what you were talking about, the shape of it. If it isn't in that typical boxed Excel kind of cell thing, what if it's in circles? What if like there's one core thing in the middle and then the subsidiary have like support circles, and then who might support you in different spaces? Like, I'm drawing shapes in my head here, but could be in any shape. Stephen Gerrard.
Okay, so like if you're listening to this, stop that bit. I don't know how far we're in, maybe like 15, 60 minutes, and just go back on that question that Jenny just said then. Who can support you with this? So I think that is a major question, again, that gets, that doesn't get explored enough. People then tend to think, well, I've got to do this, it's all on me, and take it on. But who can support you with it? That's a really important question, I think. So once you've then decided what you want to work upon, or you and the athlete have decided what you're going to work upon, who is going to help them with this? Because it's not just down to them, right?
No, good spot. Like, I guess I take that for granted sometimes in my role, because I'm the one supporting. So I'm always there, and the coaches maybe don't have to seek it. But what I do encourage people to do, and similarly with the athletes, like if they pair off and they start to explore their goals, and like, how cool would it be if they're bouncing off each other thinking, oh, well, I'm going to work on this, well, I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to add this. And then the coaches, maybe if you're lucky enough to be in a coaching team or a different sport, and you have somebody who'd like to go, hey, listen, back to our 360 conversation, like a really valuable, if people were like, I don't know, as a coach did say to me, I don't know what I don't know, Jen, and I don't know what I need to know. Like, there's some things that I can look at, and I can look at the different components of my coaching practice or a holistic approach and say, yeah, I'd like to know more about that. But if you don't know how you're being like received by others, even athletes or the coaches, a simple text to 10, 15, 20, in some cases I've seen coaches go 30 people, same question across. They can be family, friends, sporting, non-sporting, ex-athlete or alumni of the club, and just send the same message. And some have slanted it in different ways. So I don't put words in people's mouth. Some have asked, 3 words that describe me. Now, like what you can unpick from there is a little bit of a confidence boost, maybe a little bit of validation, but a massive unpick on the words that people use. Some coaches have been flabbergasted that the word care comes back in. And they're like, yeah, I knew I was, but am I showing that all the time? Am I too soft? And having laughs around that. But yeah, like, what do you think of that idea? Have you done that exercise before?
So I'm doing it now.
Oh, stop it. Right. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite timely. So I'm not doing it from my own coaching perspective, but I have done it from that. I'm doing it from me in my work perspective of kind of being involved. So I've had 360 feedback from 9 people around me from a work perspective.
Right.
I've been on a development center program with UK Sport with actors playing roles. And so I've had feedback from the actors, from the scenarios that I've been put into. I've had an interview, so I've had feedback from the interview. I've done some action learning reflection circles, which is a posh title for you sharing something that you want to get better at, and some other people giving you some input into it. And so I'm now in the process of doing exactly this. And it is an incredibly valuable process, because so one of the things that's come back for me, and you'll probably just nod and go, yep. So one of the things for me was making sure that I facilitate and manage effective meetings. So when I'm on it and I'm well planned and prepped and I do it well, the feedback generally is they're good and they're worth it. If I'm doing a million things and I come into it unplanned and prepared, it's not great. And you're trying not to go. I can see that, but
Yeah, okay, I see that. I see
Yeah,
that. But that's your creative side coming through. That's when
it's me winging it, and it's not good enough. So that for me is a very clear development thing now. And so it was the thing that I took to this discussion peer thing yesterday. It's like, right, I want to get better. I need to get better at this. This is an important thing for me and the team, that I function better in this way. So I got lots of support on how to do it. Now the difference will be I need to be able to do that and put that straight into action. Yeah. But it's a clear thing for me in my personal development that I'm going to get better at.
Amazing. So are you being supported when that feedback came back? Were you supported on how to manage that? Because my only concern would be, as I've said that and hearing you, what if people get all these responses back and they don't know how to handle them, and some of them aren't positive, or some of them are actually, in a way they just don't know how to handle? Like, what does your support look like? And then who could they pick to support them on that digesting period?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think there's probably two things. One was I had they were just called like an observer, but they were a mentor type role that pulled together the feedback from the scenarios, from the 360, from the interview that I did with her. So she shaped it into a report of some description for me, because there was some stuff in there that was contradictory. Some people going, oh yeah, you're brilliant at this, and other people going, yeah, you're not so great at this. So she kind of helped me make sense of it. Mm-hmm. But I then pulled out the key themes that I think are relevant for me. But then the other bit I think that is going to be really interesting is, and you talked about that kind of network thing. There's a thing called the personal boardroom, which I'm going to start to kind of explore. So who are the people that you have in your network that you go to for specific things to help you with specific areas? So who's the person that I go to for sector advice? Who are my go-to people on coaching that I go, right, they've got knowledge there? Who are the unlockers? Who are the people that can unlock resources for me? Who are the improvers that can help me get better at stuff? Who are the anchors? The ones that, when it's all up in the air, the ones that just go, Nick, you're doing all right. Just keep doing what you're doing. So it's a selective thing. So definitely I would consider people from their own coaching perspective. Who are those kind of people? So have a look at the personal boardroom and start to select deliberately the people that you go, right, who are the ones from a coaching perspective that are going to go right? So for example, for me, sector advice, who are the coaching people? So I then look to people like in football, like someone like Ben Bartlett, worked with him for a long time at the FA. We've had our moments of tension because we're very different people, but I really like him and I really trust his knowledge. So he would be one that I would pick up the phone to and go, Ben, what's your view on this? I really like your input into it. And I know Ben will give me some really good knowledge in that. But who are the connectors? If I want to meet different people, who are the people that I go to? So it's well worth spending some time kind of assessing your own kind of personal boardroom.
When I first came into UK coaching, you were really good at that. I mean, now I feel like I could still go to you, have a better relationship. But even at the start, I'd say I'm interested in that, and straight away you'd have a email, and I'd be like, wow, nice, because I didn't have the network or the confidence in that space at that time to just randomly go, hey, can we connect? And I think COVID has definitely opened people's doors as well, hasn't it? But yeah, that kind of extra where you'd say an extra couple of lines about me and about them, and all of a sudden it was comfortable to do that. And now I find that kind of pay it forward. If I'm fortunate enough to have two people that have similar concerns or compliment each other, I'm like, yeah, let's connect that. So there's a little bit of give from us, isn't there, to connect the dots, but also to reach out. I know I've definitely spoken to coaches who are really shy and they're like, what do I do? And I kind of just frame it like the worst case scenario is they don't get back to you. The next worst is they get back and say, I don't have any time. But if you frame the question as if there's a question you have, maybe that could be the segue. I have a question on, and I've heard that you're a really good person to talk to. If not, can you signpost me? And more, I have yet to come across somebody to say no and no. They might say, oh, thanks for getting in touch, I don't have time. But this person is one of my students. and they might be able to answer. They're doing a PhD under me or a master's. If it's another, area of sport, somebody in that sport will be able to connect you. So and we would get in contact. Well, you definitely more than me. You have way more contacts. But yeah, I think it's the willingness of us to leave the ladder down for somebody else to hop up.
Yeah, but I think again, the point that you just kind of merrily drifted over, which was so important, was know why you're doing it. So if, part of your own IDP, and I appreciate that we've jumped around from player to coach type of ones within this, but if you know what you're looking for, then you've got a specific reason to go to that person.
Yeah.
So deliberately reach out for people based upon some things that you need. So if you have a particular area that so you may struggle with asking courageous questions or challenging some of the people around you, right? Who do you know that does that really well, or who do you know that could signpost you to someone else that? So then it's a deliberate thing that you can draw back into your IDP to go, right, I know this is an area because I've had it from feedback and I've recognized it, whether it's in different ways. And I'm now deliberately reaching out to somebody to help me with that.
Yeah. And one of the other things that you mentioned to add to the end of that is that relationship when you spoke about Ben, not in that confirmation bias type thing. They're all believe what I think and get them on. Sometimes when there's a disagreement, it might be initially hard to have that relationship and hear the honest feedback that's coming, but how fruitful and how kind of multifaceted that would be if you get a different angle and different perspective on something that stops you in your track and kind of, oh, I never saw it that way. Or so I like that. I think that's really cool as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's easy to get caught in an echo chamber of people with like-minded views.
Yeah.
But definitely stretch yourself to find the ones that will challenge how you think.
Yeah, definitely. I'm mindful of time. Go into the athlete side of things. If you have a season and it runs for 8-9 months, just as a collective now, there could be some sports going, what? We go longer, we go shorter. How many times do you think you should review that? Or how often do you think an athlete and coach should look at that?
Yeah, great question. So I think it's probably a bit of trial and error depending on your own context and depending on how often you're seeing the people that you're working with. So GB Hockey men's seniors team, for the last cycle of the Olympics, the players have to take their IDP to every training session. Otherwise they don't train. And they are responsible for working on elements within their IDP in every single training session. So they are then prepared to have a conversation with the head coach, assistant coach, etc., about it at any stage. But that's because they're elite and working in sport daily. So it looks very, very different. But if you're working in a situation where you might see your athletes or the players that you're working with once, maybe twice a week, you might check in on it once a month, how they're getting on, but making sure that they have responsibility for it. You could do the start of the season where you sit down and decide the kind of things that are in it, a mid-season review, and an end of season, right, this is where we're at the moment, knowing that the end of season doesn't mean it's finished. The end of season just is another milestone. But again, I would always get it in the sense that it's the player or the athlete that leads that and presents back on their progress. So it could be they're presenting to the coach, the assistant coach, and one of their parents.
Wow.
So it's not just, I'm presenting to the coach or the coach is telling me how I've got on. Get the player to present back. The coach inputs into it, of course, because that's part of the dual aspect. But why not get their parent there? Why not invite their PE teacher from school? So you've got the parent or carer, the coach from the club, their PE teacher, and the young person or the participant is feeding back on, look, this is my progress of how I'm getting on.
Yeah.
I mean, how powerful is that?
That's cool. That's so impactful and professional to lead them into whatever environment they're going into, and yeah, that's so cool. I think we're getting up to the time. I think looking at the one addition to the development plan conversations that I do have with coaches is around individual athlete time. I think it's so important, whatever sport it is. Some sports kind of afford you those opportunities to cycle along or behind and have those small catch-ups. But where you have a semi-formal, like presenting back scenario or point in the season or the month, I think it's also equally important to get that less formal, but still an angle of seriousness on the how you doing chat. And that just kind of validation. I've seen it with some athletes who can go 4 or 5 months not having a conversation that isn't related to numbers or gains with an athlete. To where am I in your eyes at the moment? Can I get that feedback that isn't, that isn't as casual as walking from A to B, which some people do really well, but still that chit chat around, like, am I on your radar? Am I not? What kind of things are you seeing? What are you perceiving? How do I think I'm doing? Just gauge that. So I think they're kind of important to add. So we've had coach IDP, athlete IDP. We've had networks reaching out, all different shapes and sizes, and knowing why you're doing it. And reach out to people and see what comes. And obviously we're at the other end of a tweet, a phone, an email to signpost you to anybody that you need to get in touch with. What we have covered. Oh my goodness. You can find us on Twitter at Coach Convo down here, or coachconversation@gmail.com. Let us know what you think of the sessions, episodes. Let us know if there's something that you'd like to cover, any of the scenarios that come up in your sessions, even if they're virtual. Get in touch and share them with us, and we'll try and bring them to life in here, because we're in that world all the time, hearing loads of different stories. So we're just trying to share back both our own personal experience and professional to see what we can shed a light on for you. So thanks for tuning in. Spread the word. Have a bloody great week, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.